Welcome. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Max Grinnell. Thank you for the warm introduction. And I'm here to talk about the city as classroom. Cities have always fascinated me. They're the reason I get up in the morning, and they have always been what animates my work and my passion. So here we have the city as classroom. I'm going to draw on some of the examples from the city of Boston and the places that have inspired me and my work in the classroom, which is really out with my students. Many of them come at age 18 or 19. They're from the surrounding areas around Boston. They are excited and inspired by the city. Some of them come from far-flung places. Some of them come from close-in suburbs. Some of them have come from small towns of the Commonwealth and beyond. And they are all excited to come to Boston. As we know, it is America's college town after all, and they are college students. And now, I'm going to introduce you to the person who inspired my own early urban explorations. I hear some laughs out there in the audience. This is Lowly the Worm, created by Richard Scarry, son of Massachusetts. And at age 4, I was first exposed to his wanderings around Busytown. I know we have a few people in the audience who are probably familiar with Busytown, a pig as a baker, a hippo as a cop. And I always thought to myself, what are all these people doing in this city? What are they up to? How are there ways that we can use Lowly and his friends with my students who are 18 or 19 years old? It's something many of them are familiar with. It's very accessible. And they like to think about, how am I like Lowly? How am I like the baker? How can I learn about these people? And it sounds a little silly, but it's an easy way and a kind of an understandable way to get them excited about the place they are now inhabiting, Boston, and maybe some about the cities they'll live in the future. And of course, one of the first things we do is we pass around copies of Busy, Busy Town. And I ask them, how is this like the place you live? How is this different than the place you've come from? And we'll have them start with creating a list of 5 to 7 questions that come up through reading this book. We're not reading 100 pages of urban theory. We're not talking about 50 pages of an article on architectural history in Boston. We're starting what I like to think of as a baseline, something we can all share together and talk about. And I tell you, they really take to it. And some of the questions, seemingly from the observations of these wandering cats, these car-driving mice, we get into everything from urban transit to creating new parks out of old parking spaces. You name it, we've talked about it. And it's all really because of this small but rather wonderful book. The T. Here we are right on the green line. And 3 of the things that I'm going to talk about with you this evening are the 3 things that I always start out with my students every semester in my urban studies courses as we think about the city as classroom. The first one is movement through the city. And I'm not qualified to teach dance or terpsichore, so we talk about the movement with those things at the end of our legs, our feet, transit, whether it's talking about taking mass transit, renting a bicycle, etc. And the thing that always excites them is that those of you who have ridden the T and other mass transit system know they are not without their problems or faults. We probably have some personal stories in the audience. But I always say, take a ride on one of the lines. Take your notebook with you. Take your camera with you. Many of these students are visual learners. It is, after all, an art college. They have come to immerse themselves not only in the practice of doing art, but in the practice of learning about art through cities. Whether they love it or hate it or are indifferent to it is up to them. So I have them go out on a ride, 30 minutes in length, by themselves, and jot down at least 5 or 7 observations about what they see. And the wonderful thing is, it only costs $2. That's one of the first things we do in my class. Public art. It's immediate, it's accessible, and in many cases, it's very visceral. A lot of these students are coming to a place where they are surrounded by their peers and colleagues in doing art at age 18 or 19. That is all they have come to do. And it's very exciting. And public art, by its very nature, it's free. Anyone can come out, observe this piece, which is a piece that I've written about before, and I always get excited about. It's the Os Jimenez piece down on the Rose F. Kennedy Greenway, down by the waterfront in Boston. And I have them look for 3 to 5 pieces of public art on their own while walking, look it up on Wikipedia, check out boston.com, another online resource, I'm not really particular about how you come to the source or the piece of art. Take 3 to 5 pieces, go out, not only document it, talk about the context, the buildings around it, what's the streetscape around it, what's the design around it, but also engage, and this is, those of you who know who teach, can be difficult, engage with people right in front of you, which shocks some of them, and some of them are like, oh my God, this is so exciting. So we're really able to get them on board in a way that's immediate and, again, very visceral and in person. So they'll come out and I ask them to talk to 2 or 3 people about the piece. So it's not only about the art, but it's also about the context of the art in the city. And I think it's one of these things that really resonates with the student. And this piece, just as a kind of a short aside, has also generated a lot of controversy. When it was put up in Boston, people said it's too colorful for the city, too much color. People said, well, it looks like it might be a terrorist, right? So the thing is, it's an exciting way to generate conversations, not just about art and the technical merits, which is as a non-visual artist, I'm not qualified to discuss, but also a conversation about meaning, identity, context, current events, any number of subjects. And for them, it's very visceral, and they really take to it, which is fantastic. And here we have the last thing that I'd like to talk about, which is history as narrative. Some of them don't expect to get history in a class on urban studies, but I give that to them because I feel like urban studies in many cases, and I mean this as a wonderful compliment, is a potpourri of subjects. We have anthropology, we have economics, we have sociology, we have discussions about public space. So what I like to do with them, and this is an example culled from my collection of Chicago postcards. This is State and Madison Streets, which was formerly known as the world's busiest corner. I'm not sure it holds that title today, but it's fairly close. As I like to give them 10 postcards from an assortment of cities, Chicago, Boston, Toronto, St. Petersburg, Florida, and I take them, and as visual learners, they really enjoy this as well, and I have them say, look at each one of these postcards carefully. I want you to devise 3 or 5 short narrative stories about each one. 150 words, which is good, especially with shortened attention spans, my own included at times, to think about what are the stories that these postcards tell us. And because I like to mix it up with both kind of creative free expression and also a little bit of, dare we say, objective facts, I say make 2, maybe 1 or 2 of them kind of creative stories on your own based on what you see in the piece, and also 1 or 2, go back, use a number of online sources and other resources. Sometimes we even take them into an old-time physical library, which is fantastic. This is where I was raised. To think about what are those facts that are told in these postcards. And they really, really enjoy this. It's probably one of their favorite things they do. Some of them have seen old postcards at home, maybe through a parent's collection. Maybe they still collect print postcards. But it's something that's a lot of fun. And I've actually had students come later and talk to me and said, yeah, you kind of got me into this type of collection of ephemera, which is really, really exciting. So these are some of the lessons I've learned from teaching at an art college for the last 5 years, and some of the ways that I've got excited about using the city as classroom. And for the last slide, I was going to say, excuse me, that's not the last slide. I'd love to hear from you in the future, and like a lot of other participants here, I'm on social media, at Twitter, at The Urbanologist, and theurbanologist.com. Thank you so much for your time tonight.